Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome. Hello, good morning, Vietnam, and all that stuff. Hi, welcome back to Whispered Insights. Name is Esteban Kolsky. This is the fifth show in the series, and we've been doing this for so long that we ran out of people. So we're starting to bring the same people back. No, just kidding. Although we will bring some people back, and today's the first repeat show. If you remember, Alan Berkson, who's my co-host today, and I did the initial episode where we tried to define Whispered Insights and what it was. Since then, we both become much better at this. So today's going to be an amazing show. I'm actually very excited at this. A few weeks ago, we started talking about this, and we talked about it over the weeks with Alan, but we have a pretty cool show to discuss. Scale and content. I mean, namely, what happens to your content strategies as you begin to scale? It's easy to do a trial, a skunk works project. It's easy to do a A/B comparison, a small thing. Create your content, put it out there, see what happens, and then you have to make the decision. How do I scale this? How do I change things? How do I keep personalization active while scaling? How do things happen in an enterprise? And that's what we want to talk about to you today, with you today. That's what we'll talk about with you today with Alan Berkson. Remember, comments are welcome, questions are welcome. We'll incorporate it into the show. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And without any further ado, here's my co-host for the day, Mr. Alan Berkson.
Esteban.
Yeah, applause.
I need background music. I need like entry
music.
Dude,
we need something. I hate the whole intro. The intro is like
if I go on stage when I'm doing a keynote, they have music that cues me in.
I know, but
what would yours be?
You have to understand this intro, this like 30 seconds to a minute and a half or whatever intro. It's the most stressful part of my week. I'd rather have another kid than do this.
But what is your intro music?
Tony Bennett probably singing. What's the name of the one that he talks about jokers and kings? Can't remember the name, but it's a great song.
Or it could be I'm a joker. What's that one?
I'm a joker. I'm a loser.
A smoker. Yeah, Midnight Toker. Who is that? That's
I don't remember.
Lost in 70. No, mine would be Right Now by Van Halen. Producers.
There you go.
It goes. It's got this really cool
I'll do one better. I'll use Journey. Never Stop Believing, because
there you go.
Every time I go on Amazon, whatever playlist I have, Journey is there. Hey, when I listen to country from the 90s, Journey is the #1 song. You want to listen to big band? Journey is the #1 song. That song is everywhere. But anyways, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
You're the first repeat guest. I will be the first one to say Steve Miller Band says Danny Weinstein. So there you go. The last one that we did together was a little weird because it was the first one trying to define Whispered Insights and the direction for this. I've done 3 more since then, and they're getting better and better. Great conversations. I look forward to having a great conversation with you. Like I said earlier, for those who joined us late, please put your comments, whatever social network you're in. Please put your questions. We'll be happy to address. But here we go. Alan, let's talk about scaling content, or scale and content, and scale or content, or however you want to link those two. If you don't remember, this started a few weeks back. We had a couple conversations about it, but I want to have an interesting conversation about what happens to content when you begin to scale, and how do you get there? So what are your initial thoughts? Let's start from there.
I think if I remember correctly, we were talking about how if you're playing bingo at home, I'm going to say AI within the first 5 minutes of the show, so I apologize. But we were talking about what generative content would do, and basically create. My comment to you was it's creating mediocrity at scale, and that does not necessarily bode well for people who create content or organizations who are trying to be effective with content. Just because you can do something at scale, the rules don't change as to what works and what doesn't work, right? It still has to be, has to say something, and it has to say something that's differentiated and aligned with what you're trying to get your message across. Why? Because then it just becomes background noise. Are you going to tell me the behavioral psychology about if you hear something 12 times, it doesn't matter whether it's a good or a bad, representation of the brand, I'm still going to remember the brand?
Yeah. Cue Coca-Cola, cue Pepsi, cue every large brand in the world that spends billions of dollars in putting themselves out there, because they're not promoting a product that you don't know. I mean, look, if you don't know Coca-Cola, let's be honest, it's really unlikely. The only people that didn't know Coca-Cola that I met in my life is when I went to Poland in 1990, right after, literally 1 month after the wall came down. And most people in Poland heard of Coca-Cola but didn't know what it was, although it was in the black market. Everybody else in the world that is not in a situation like that knows Coca-Cola. So why does Coca-Cola continue to create content?
Well, even Pepsi knows Coca-Cola. Their Super Bowl ad said, "Is Pepsi okay?"
Yeah. Actually, no. Is Coca-Cola okay? The answer is no. When I go to a restaurant, it's like, can I get a Pepsi? Is Coca-Cola okay? No. Let me get some water.
You never get that. You say, "Hey, can I have a Coke?" And they'll say, "Is Pepsi okay?"
But no, serious question. Like, look, content is. We discussed this with John Reed on the second show. I have a show again with John Reed next week. We're going to talk about what he calls the BS filters for the enterprise when it comes to filtering content. We talked about charlatans and content generated by charlatans last week with Liz Miller. This is a big topic. So I'm going to say content sucks. I mean, very, 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 very few companies are using content properly, and even fewer buyers or even fewer decision makers are actually, geared towards content. So why would I actually worry about creating content at scale versus creating content? How does it change, and why? What does it matter?
Well, it comes back to the question why you're creating content at all.
Okay.
Are you trying? So you create content because you want to tell a story, you want to educate, you want to influence. And let's start with those three. If it's bad content, it's not telling a story. If it's bad content, it's probably not educating. If it's bad content, it's not going to influence.
Yeah. So then why create content? I mean, how hard is it to create good content? Forget the scale. Let's ignore the scale for now. We'll get to that later in the show. But how hard is it to create good content that either creates a persona for your brand or a promise or influences or educates or we're not even going to talk about drip campaigns, but like just basically creates an action.
So let me give you an example. You want to tell a story about your brand. Yeah. Do you tell the story from your point of view about what you think is important, or you tell the story from your customer's point of view and what they think is important?
Well, it depends who you ask, because the reason I'm asking this question is because in my perspective, very few people know how to create good content because they don't consider either the audience or what's the customer point of view that they want to replay. I mean, most companies will tell content from their site. My product is awesome. I added these 3 features. My product is the only one that does this. My product is being approved by U.S. Soccer League as the official Pepsi product of the U.S. Soccer League.
That's so. Who's the hero of the story?
Doesn't matter. It's bad content.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is from my experience, the biggest mistake that let's talk about marketers, and I guess marketers in sales is when they're telling their stories, when they're creating content. It's what you said. It's speeds and feeds, features and functions, whatever you want to talk about. It's look at this cool thing that we created and it's going to change your life. But it starts with look at this cool thing I created, as opposed to understanding how your life is and looking at what outcomes you might want to have that would improve your life.
You're from the people that I know that create content, you're the most qualified to speak about this because you understand the process really well, right? And maybe not get into what I want to get out of this, but like, how do you create content? Forget good or bad. How do you create content? Number one, and number two, how do you make that content matter? That's the question that we had to get to before we get to scale. Because if you actually think about the content creation process and content that matters process, and even like Brent asked, is if you create good content but you deliver at the wrong time, is it still good content, right? So it really doesn't matter what you call good content, but how do you create content and how do you make it relevant? Let's get started at that part of the process here.
Well, let's start with that question there. Bring that back up. If it's good content delivered at the wrong time, is it still good content? No. No. It's simple. That's part of it is, is it contextually relevant? And is the audience receptive to hearing about it at that particular time? It starts with.
Go ahead.
I feel like we're trying to boil the ocean, with
I know. We're not trying to boil the ocean. I'm trying to get a good 2-minute clip where it says, forget all this stuff that everybody talks about. Everybody says content should be contextually relevant. Everybody says content should speak to the audience. Everybody says content should reflect the brand's promise and all this stuff. Forget all that stuff. Let's get down to brass tack. Forget being a brand. Forget the audience. Forget everything. I mean, how do you create good content and then how do you scale it? Or can you do
that? The scale part is the hard part, Esteban.
Okay, but how do you create good content?
Creating good content is starting with why. Why am I creating the content? What is the purpose? Is it because I want to, tell a story about somebody who did something cool? Do I want to impart a lesson for others to learn from? Do I want to try to influence, what the persuasive essay? Do I want to see if I can help you understand a point of view that we have that may be valuable to you, but you may not have gotten to yet? Wait, bring Martin's other comment back up. It's all about aligning content, personas. No, you see, no.
That's correct. That's correct. Sorry, I love you, Martin. You're a great guy, but that's horrible. That's the reason we have shitty content.
Basically, somebody says, "I need some social content." So let's create some. Oh, I see some good. Here's something I liked. So let's create some meme. That's not how you create content.
Sure.
That's just.
Let me help you with your answer because this is the part that you do exactly well, and why you're so good at creating content. Good content starts with asking the right question. Right. Good content is what you were saying. What is the purpose of this content? Why are you doing it? What's the action that you expect to get? When do you want to use it? Where are you going to publish it? All these questions are good questions. And that's what you need before you actually begin to create content. It's not about aligning. You're not going to align anything. You can align topics with personas and all that, and all that stuff. That's not what you're going to do. What you're going to do is you have to figure out what is it that you're trying to communicate in a story that answers the basic questions.
Well, I think it's to take a step back. And there's stuff I did along the lines of story worlds. If you think about how entertainment companies tell stories, they have a story world. There are characters, there's missions, there's aspects of it, there's aspirational values. And as entertainment content creators create more content in that same story world, they have to make sure that it's internally consistent so that when somebody watches this, they wait, that character wouldn't do that, or that doesn't make sense, from a timeline point of view, because it doesn't fit into, wait, they were somewhere else at that time. And there's a consistency and a continuity to it, because that brings value to the audience saying, that makes sense. And what you see in what I see in enterprises is that they don't create content along a core story because no one's really either ever identified it or enforced it. Each person within the organization has a goal. Like, I've got to get leads. I've got to get more followers on LinkedIn. And so they try to just get attention. And maybe that's an aspect of why you don't create content. You don't create a content just to get attention.
So you basically set out to build your brand cinematic universe, for lack of a better term, right?
I had a technical glitch. You said you basically.
I said you basically set out to create your brand cinematic universe.
Right.
That's where you get started.
Well, look, one of the things that I look at is when it comes down to why does your business exist and what do you have to give to the world? And
business exists to attract and retain a customer.
Okay, and what do you have unique? What's your unique selling proposition? What's your unique value proposition? What do you have to give to the world? I want to help companies.
That's my cinematic universe. That's a universe that I create.
And so if creating content, if every piece of content doesn't go back to that core value, that core proposition, random acts of content. If everything doesn't tie back, then you're just creating noise, or you're just creating it's like eating candy. It's a quick hit, but there's no lasting value. In fact, it might just make you feel sick afterwards.
So before we get into like how this changed in the last few decades, I mean, before content was easy. It was just like get your, like you're talking about, like Martin was talking about, identify the people you want to talk to, what are the pain points, identify what are the items that you have that solve those pain points. Less filling tastes great, right? The customers don't want to feel bloated after drinking a beer, and they want good flavor. Less filling tastes great. That's what we do. We created that and we put it out there. And then for like the next 10, 15 years, everything we talk about is less filling tastes great. People identified that, with your brand. The choice of a new generation, right? Same thing. The brand would love this. Cherry Pepsi, nothing better in the world. Thank you, God, for Cherry Pepsi. But that's basically what it used to be. You would create a tagline. You would create something that defines who you are in relation to, like Martin said, your talking points. Your persona's pain points and everything. But that has changed now. Even before we get into content, we live in a different world. I mean, before you would have created the Avengers movie version 1, and then you would do a sequel, and then that would be it. But now enter Marvel, and that changed the way we produce content. I mean, if you look at the movies, it's the easiest way to actually figure out what content should look like. The Marvel Cinematic Universe changed the way we actually act as an organization, as a society, and as a marketplace. Everything is aligned to everything else. Everything makes sense within everything else, and you can pick any of those pieces and make it a complete independent brand within the cinematic universe of Marvel, and then be okay with that. So why wouldn't you, instead of doing like less feeling tastes great, or the choice of a new generation, why wouldn't you focus on something else that encompasses all that stuff, and then just those pieces of it? Is that what you're talking about?
I feel like you just you just did a mic drop. There's a concept in entertainment world called transmedia, and transmedia is not. So if you write a book and then you make a movie based on the book, and then you make a video game based on the book, but it's all the same story, that's just taking the same, that's not transmedia. That's just telling the same story on different platforms. But if you tell different pieces of the story based on the unique elements of the media, this is Marshall McLuhan, the medium and the message. If you take that's transmedia, and that's so. What is, if you want to tell a story, what is good content? It's staying core to the central tenets of what your story world is, but then finding the best way to express it in the medium that you're looking at. You're not going to tell the same story on LinkedIn that you tell on a commercial, that you tell on a billboard, that you tell in a sales deck.
So in a world of TikTok and YouTube Shorts and the long format, is transmedia taking the pieces that matter to a specific audience? Going back to what Martin was talking about, Do we take it? Do we chunk the content, create a smaller version of it, align it with, the specific part of the audience, and then create label that good content for that specific part of the audience?
So the short answer is yes, but it's got to tie back to, I know that everything you say before but doesn't count. The short answer is yes, but it's got to tie back to the story. A mistake that enterprise marketers make is, oh, there's a cool TikTok trend. Let's jump in.
Yeah.
Because we'll get attention. It's like, well, not all attention is good attention. Just ask Bud Light. And I have advice for Bud Light. Go back to what your brand is. It has nothing to do with social good.
Too late.
What's that?
Too late. Too late.
Too late for what?
For Bud Light.
No, not too late. Never too late.
I'm willing. I'm willing to put money on this. Even if they go back to what the audience wants and everything, they're never going to regain the entire audience.
They definitely take a hit. But I don't think most people understand the mistake they made. Bud Light is not a social good brand. Never has been. Bud Light is about having fun with your friends and, playing on the beach or sports, right?
Yeah.
So why would you as a brand get involved in, and so that's where marketers make mistake. And obviously that's an extreme one, but it happens in small doses all the time. And sometimes, look, if you've ever looked at an ad or seen something that a brand did and just shook your head and say, what were they thinking? That's the challenge that brands face, is that they're not staying true to what their core tenets are. What do they have to give to the world? What's their corporate narrative, Brent? They got to identify their corporate narrative and they got to stick to it.
Okay, so let me recap where we are so far. To have good content, you need your brand cinematic universe of sorts. You need to have the world in which your brand plays, right? And dude, I didn't say when I was a gardener. Oh shit, no, you did. Okay, drink, everybody.
Drinking game, yeah.
So,
well, I said corporate narrative. That was the corporate narrative.
Okay, corporate narrative is drinking that. I got it. It. So, anyways, so you need to create a brand cinematic universe of sorts. You need to create your characters, your personas, your products, your differentiators, your killer, your killer go-to-market stories and all that stuff. Then you need to create a corporate narrative, and I said it so you don't have to drink, but if you want to, you're welcome to. Then you need to create a corporate narrative on top of that cinematic universe. And then from that, you start actually telling stories, and those stories from the corporate, that stem from the corporate narrative in the universe, that's what actually starts becoming good content. Did I get that right?
You did.
That's amazing.
That content comes from people. The challenge with businesses is KPIs and how people's success is measured, and nobody's OKR or KPI is, did I stay true to the brand narrative, to the corporate narrative? It's, did I generate leads? Did I get views? Did I generate buzz? Those are all things that are not, they're not goals. They're sort of the residue of good content.
So now we're going forward, because so far all we did is establish the setup in which you create the content, and now you jump to the outcomes and what comes after that.
No. I'm not jumping to the outcomes. I'm saying that I work at company A, and I've done some really successful stuff at company A, and company B says, hey, you should come over and work for us because you've done some really great stuff at company A. So I go to company B and I start doing what I did for company A. Is that a good plan?
For you, yeah, because that's why you were hired.
But is that good for the business?
For company B, company B made the mistake of hiring you to repeat what you did in company A. Then company B is going to suffer the wrath of a bundled approach to content.
Now, if company B said to me, I know you were very successful at company A, and that's why we know you can execute. I want you to find out, before you do anything, you really have to dig into who we are as a company and what we have to give to the market, and then find a different route to accomplish what you. I don't want you to do what you did for company A, because we're not company A, we're company B, right? And that's the challenge that organizations face, and this is not just about content. This is about anything that they did at company A versus B.
Yeah, that's true.
We're
But
just
we're
talking
talking
about
about content. We're talking about content, right? I mean, yeah. So then you would prefer company B to hire you and say like, we love what you did at company A, but we're company B, so we want you to do something that is company B exclusive, which is right. It fits right in what we're talking about. You create a universe, you create a corporate narrative, and then you start spinning.
Or don't
stories
even
from there.
create it. It could look, if you're coming in, it already exists. It may not be well articulated. It may
Uncover it and document it if you want to say that.
right. Or even look, company B might have already done this great job of building a corporate narrative. They've documented it. They've got the whole thing, and then you come in and decide to do your own thing. Because that's why you hired me, right? Because I did this at company A. So it's not even about identifying it. It's about, you have to, does it exist? And if it exists, how do I work within the constraint, not the constraints, work to support the story world that the company has created, as opposed to just try to make my mark because, I'm a big shot and I've got a lot of awards. Or
why would I bring you if you're not going to change what I have?
You are going to change what I have, but you have to do it but within my story world, not company A's story world.
So then, I mean, in addition to everything we said, a good content creation strategy is going to be incredibly dynamic and adapt to everything, not by jumping the latest TikTok or the latest, trend on whatever, but by actually adapting to the market and going back to what Martin was saying. I mean, the reason I didn't like the initial statement that Martin put out there on the brand is, like the right time, the right persona, the right message, is because when you embrace that, then you become static. You do that once. Most companies will do this once and then never do it again, never revise it. And that's the problem that I have with a lot of companies that are still talking about, how good they were in their heyday. Oh, back in the 1970s, we had the best pet rock, and today we're still the best pet rock producer. Guess what? Fucking pet rock doesn't exist anymore, dude. So
but now our pet rock is AI enabled. So
still fucking pet rock. Sorry.
Well, but it's a good point, Esman, from in terms of AI enabled. As you grow as a company, the world changes, your customers change, your technology changes, your product evolves, and your narrative will evolve as well. But the core story world, what made you successful, what you have to bring to the world, that's something that you really have to protect and embrace. Where does a new technology fit into your story world? You're selling pet rocks, so now you have AI enabled pet rocks. Can you fill
your core narrative never changes, or it changes very slowly, or
the core foundation of your story world, your foundational narrative, why you exist. There's one of my favorite essays of all time was Theodore Levitt. He wrote it for Harvard Business Review. He was a professor at Harvard Business School, and he said, and it was called Marketing Myopia. And his premise was most companies don't know what business is. And to show you how long ago he wrote it, he was talking about the railroads. And the railroads were not in the train business. They were in the transportation business, or the logistics business, or something more than that. And so most companies don't, they say, oh, I'm in the business of making X. It's like, no, you're not. You're in the business, and this is where we get to the outcome. You're helping people achieve outcomes, and that's part of your foundation. Why do you exist? Why does Salesforce exist? Why does ServiceNow exist? They exist to help companies achieve outcomes. The technology changes. Salesforce is not the same company it was 20 years ago. ServiceNow is not the same company it was, but the products evolve over time. But if they stay true to their foundational narrative, that's where the long-term evergreen success comes from.
I disagree. For technology, I disagree. Because when Salesforce first started, it was the core narrative was about no software. You don't have to write software. We write the software for you.
Stop.
To use it. What?
That's a campaign. Go back. What's the core narrative?
No, that was the core narrative. When
Nope.
Salesforce first started in 1999, when Salesforce started, and you're going to be drinking a lot today. When I was a fucking gardener, just for the drinking game, but when I was a gardener, we had a call with Mark Benioff in the early 2000s where he actually pulled in a favor to get all the Gartner analysts into one call so he could actually introduce the company. He did not use anything other than the reason we exist is to make sure that you don't use software again. We are no software company.
It's not true. That's not his foundational narrative. That's a campaign.
What was the narrative? What was the narrative?
The narrative is that the paradigm for how, and I use paradigm, damn it. The paradigm for how companies are managing and implementing their technology is changing, and they're not. So this is there's a new way to implement and acquire and use software.
That was Salesforce corporate narrative at the beginning. That's what you're saying.
It still is.
No, it's not.
Well,
Dude,
they're not. They're not. Why do they try to use? Why do they come out with Genius or Einstein or whatever they're doing? Why? Because they're continually trying to take the new technology and apply it. I can't believe I'm defending Salesforce. They're constantly.
Me neither. I'm not attacking you, by the way.
But look, the foundational narrative of Salesforce, and I'm doing this on the fly, is not no software. It's let's take technological innovation and bring the value to organizations at a broader scale. That's it.
That's you're gonna stick out that's a corporate narrative for Salesforce for the last 20, 40, 25 years.
Yep. What is no software? No software is a campaign. And why do they care about no software? It's not no software. It's what he meant by no software is you don't have to have these large implementations where you buy $5 million worth of software and $3 million worth of hardware and $20 million worth of implementation services and put it in a data center. That's what he was fighting against. So he was basically saying,
how does Einstein?
So what does no software mean? So no software means you don't have to do it the old way. We have a new way, and that's his foundation narrative. There's a better way for you to acquire and implement.
25 years later, I can make the argument that 25 years later, the technology, the better way is no longer the issue here.
Well, hold on. Just because they haven't executed well or stayed true to their foundation narrative.
No. They have executed exceptionally well. I mean, if you really think about it, they're pulling in $35-40 billion a year in revenue.
Oh, Esteban, stop that. You've told me a million times that just because you're making a lot of revenue doesn't mean that you're executing well.
That's true. But the point is, we're talking about marketing here. The purpose of marketing is generating business. And the purpose of marketing, talking about the narrative of like you're doing it in a different way, it's generated from zero to $40 billion.
Every new campaign that Salesforce does, the new technology is about making new technology accessible to all businesses and helping them not have to go through the pain of implementing it all by themselves and figuring it all by themselves. You trust us. We're going to be your technology company. You just give me a monthly fee per user and we'll help you do your stuff. That's what no software means, because their software. What they're really seeing is saying you don't have to be in the software and technology business.
So let me take one step back. I'm actually very impressed by what you're saying, by the way. It's just to let you know, and we'll continue to go forward. But let's take one step back on this. Is there a better way to use technology? Was that what customers were looking for, or is that what customers still are looking for, or was that like a leap of faith from Salesforce that if we go this direction, we can get somewhere?
So I'm basically building Salesforce's foundational narrative on the fly,
identifying
it. No, but it's good. No, but this is good because most people are familiar with the company, so it helps.
Salesforce is a magnificent marketing company, so it's a great example to use in this discussion.
But I want to differentiate this. There's a difference between a campaign and your foundational narrative. No software is a campaign. Okay, it was a campaign focused on getting people's attention because there's this. But in the end, what Salesforce has done is democratize the technological innovations. So if I'm a company, not only don't I have to worry about the upfront cost in terms of investing in software and technology. I don't have to even invest in innovation because Salesforce will do that for me. And when something new comes out, they will find a way to bring it into the offering that I'm already paying for on a monthly basis. So they're giving me access to analytics. They're giving me access to collaboration tools. They're giving me access to AI. They're giving me access to mobile. And
so everything you're talking about is 1000% what we used to say at SAP, which has been around for 50 years, not 25.
I'm not saying they don't have a similar foundational narrative, but okay. SAP's challenge is that their foundational narrative is a little, tougher because they were also in the on-premise software business.
Where will be, doesn't matter. But so, I mean, that's a whole different discussion, but still, even if the on-premises versus online foundation, or however you want to call it, the idea is the same. There's innovation, my provider will bring it to me. That's enterprise tech in a nutshell.
If Salesforce came out with...
you were going in a good direction, but then you got muddled by making it the same as everybody else. I love the idea that you said that, the campaigns are different from the core narrative, and the core narrative it functions in a universe. But then you went a little too far and you muddled it by making it what everybody else is saying. I still want to go back and differentiate.
Wow.
No, this is serious. I mean,
I hear you, and I agree with you.
Okay, so then let's forget the modeling of like everybody does the same. So like now we're Salesforce, and we said this is an example. And like I love Salesforce, and I will continue to love Salesforce forever because they were an excellent client of mine when I was independent, and they may or may not become a client again. And I'm not trying to get additional business, but like not only that, but they've always been kind to me and giving access to everything I needed. And I think they do a magnificent job of marketing, which is why I use them as an example.
Wait, Brent, you have to bring up that message. Sorry.
No. Alan did not work at Salesforce just for the purpose of this.
I never worked at Salesforce.
Me neither, but I still love those guys. But beyond the point, I mean, I'm using it because it's a great example because everybody knows Salesforce is a marketing powerhouse. I mean, forget the technology. Technology is easy. Marketing is hard. And Salesforce is a marketing powerhouse. In the last 23 years, they managed to do things that nobody been able to do before, including growing to $40 billion from year, $40 billion in revenue just on the back of marketing. But so we have the.
So here's a question for you: If Salesforce
universe,
right? So if Salesforce came out with a video camera,
yes,
does that make sense to you?
Salesforce had an Einstein bobblehead that was AI enabled a few years ago. I'm probably nobody remembers. It might have been just a gimmick for.
Hold on.
It makes sense. Hold on. Let me answer your question with an example. They had an Einstein AI enabled bobblehead. That was analytics enabled bobblehead that you could actually ask questions. Such as, what was the best selling territory we had in the last quarter, and it would actually answer in plain English, right? And this was years ago before we had GAI and all this stuff. And it was a great gimmick, but it didn't work as a product. So the answer to that is like, it wouldn't make sense. But it wouldn't make sense for Salesforce to venture into the VR headset market either, because it's not part of the universe. Because it's not part of the universe.
Right.
But that's we go back to the beginning. The Salesforce cinematic universe is about technological innovation on the cloud. That's their universe, right? Yes. The narrative is about we bring cloud innovation to everything that you do, and the characters are like Flo and Cody and Einstein and all those freaking puppets that scare the shit out of me when I see them live. Okay, so that's how they actually maintain good content, and as long as they keep aligning to that, they maintain good content. It's a good idea for Salesforce to create more characters. Some of them will succeed, some of them won't. Same thing that happens to Marvel. Mrs. Marvel didn't work very well.
So look, one of the measures of do you have a good foundational narrative and a strong corporate narrative is, are your actions easily identified as aligned or not aligned with your narrative?
Okay.
So when a company does something, Salesforce comes out with a bowling ball. You're like, what? Why would Salesforce come out with a bowling ball?
But that's a tchotchke. That's a gimmick. That's not a problem.
No, but there are companies who do things. That's an extreme. But there are companies who will do something.
Let's call them meta, for lack of a better term. Is that a proper term? I don't know if that's a brand or not, but let's call that company Meta, because you set up to connect the whole world, and then all of a sudden you decide to buy a VR headset company and go into a different world and create a third world that nobody cares for.
Right. So I'm going to go back to your original question about what is good content, and it goes back to that. So it aligns with what we just talked about in terms of your corporate narrative, your foundation narrative, and what you have to give to the world. And if you come out with a piece of content and people go, that doesn't make sense, or that was a little odd, or that was surprising in a not good way, that's because you've strayed from that there, because people have expectations of you as a brand. That doesn't mean you can't evolve as a brand, but you have to make sure that your foundational narrative doesn't change. Netflix was in the video rental business, but what they're really in was the entertainment delivery business. Right. So when they went to the cloud and started streaming, that was aligned with what they were doing. Right.
It's the same thing. And when they stopped charging by the movie and they start charging a subscription, it's the same thing. There's some evolutionary elements of their business model.
But they're still in the entertainment delivery business, Esteban.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And so great content or good content, that's a whole different story. But good content starts with, are you aligning with the foundational narrative and the core elements of your company's story world to add to the story, extend the story, or is there some sort of a dissonance where, wait, that doesn't make sense for that company to come out with something like that or to say things like that? That's not, you have a serious financial services company who comes out with some quirky, gimmicky thing to try to get a younger audience, and they kind of step on some of their image in terms of how they built. You mean like Bud Light? Well, no, look, Bud Light was somebody was trying to do something that was.
Doesn't matter.
It's a company A and company B scenario where
it's something that is just mentioned.
It was not aligned with the corporate narrative. Plain and simple. Forget any corporate social good. That's not Bud Light's story world. Bud Light's story world is fun, and generally, male-focused fun.
So let's. I think we're a good point to start incorporating scale to this discussion, which was the basis of this show, right? I mean, you already defined what good content is. You already defined how do you create it. You already defined the universe, the corporate narrative, the alignment, and all that stuff. So, how do you scale that and keep the part that is more interesting to me? That is the second part of this conversation. Is to keep the personalization. But how do you scale content within that universe? I mean, I feel we're going back to the transmedia discussion of sorts. But
it is sort of. But let's go back to the tools of scale. Being able to do something, being able to create lots of different content is not scale from a content point of view, because you can create bad content. So
hold on, go back to that for a second. So it's not a question of quantity.
It's not a question of quantity.
Scale is not about quantity.
Scaling your content. I think maybe you need to clarify your question.
Well, you said that it's not a question of producing a large amount of content. It's just a question of remaining true to.
All right. So I see. So there's two ways to go with that. One is, do you need to create a lot of content? The answer is probably no. But the other is, just because you can create a lot of content doesn't necessarily mean you should or that it will be good. And so the tools that we have, the tools we have today allow people to create here. Chat GPT, write me, a TikTok script for this, or write me, an essay from whatever. That's all. That doesn't give any of the qualities of, is it aligned with our corporate story world? Is it aligned with our corporate narrative? Does it move? Does it expand our story?
ChatGPT, here's 10 stories that we wrote in the past about our corporate narrative. Using the syntax and intent of those, write me a new one aimed at this new market. That's doable.
That is doable, and that's directionally good.
That's good prompting, that people would say, like the kids say these days.
It's what?
It's good prompting.
It's good prompting. I'm working on my my prompting engineer resume, because I'd like to make $900,000 a year as an AI prompt engineer.
You can do that. That's easy. But anyways, no. But this is a part. I want to go back to this question of quantity.
But scaling. Look, I learned in my first year of business school economics class the concept of diminishing returns. That first Twinkie, it's delicious. All right, let's forget Twinkies. That first Krispy Kreme donut.
Okay, but Twinkies are delicious. No.
Seriously. That first Krispy Kreme donut, oh, that's good. That second one, it's still good. That third one, well, probably shouldn't have done that. And the fourth one is,
which for the record could never be said about Twinkies. A whole case of Twinkies is a good start. So
And the same thing goes with content. Being able, just because you can create a lot of something doesn't necessarily brings more value to what you're trying to accomplish. You're the outcomes guy, right? And so just because you can't, the challenge with what's happening with Chat GPT and these generative tools is that it makes it very easy for people to create content without that, one, who are not very good at it or qualified or understand the outcomes that they're trying to achieve. And the other is understanding the efficacy of the incremental piece of content they create.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish for you.
No, I just say, look, one blog is great, so let me create 30 of them. No one's going to read 30 blogs.
See, this is what I wanted to get to. By the way, Brent, you grew up on Twinkies and Coke. That's 50% of a good diet. If you were to put Pepsi there, that would be 100% of a good diet. Just so you know. But
Twinkies and Coke.
Yeah. But this is what I wanted to get to. I mean, it's not a question. Scaling is not about quantity. It's about retaining, the universe and the corporate, the core narrative and the intent. So it doesn't matter. It's not a question of quantity. But then, if you don't do quantity, how the hell do you personalize and create content that is aligned to different people, different personas? And then we get to outcomes. And that's a lot of discussion.
How do you align?
If it's not about quantity, how do you create content that talks to different personas in different situations? That's what scale is. Scale is like, look, you built a product, you find the market fit for your product, it works, and you sell. You sell as much as you can. Now you need to expand into another market, either another vertical, another industry, another.
All right, I'm going to tell you a technology story. I worked at Lehman Brothers once upon a time, and in the early days, this was probably, let's call it 1991, 1992, and they hired a guy to run a team to develop some software for managing fixed income trading, and they were using this methodology called object oriented programming. Back then it was new. He spent 3 months and did nothing. There was no code. There was nothing delivered. Nobody. It's like, what are you doing? And then in the 4th month, they delivered a system, and then the 5th month, and then they just went. They went to scale. They were delivering software at a scale that no other team could even come close to. Mm-hmm. That's how you scale content. You have to build and be sure about what the core elements of your story are, and then you can use that to mix and match. But if you don't put the thought in up front, you're just going to be scaling garbage, because you could easily scale content in terms of quantity, but to scale it with quality, you have to have those elements in place. You have to do that work, that object-oriented work. You have to build the pieces.
So what's the corresponding, what goes on top of what we discussed are the corresponding pieces for scaling content versus programs, for example?
It's defining what it is that what are the elements of your story world. Is it we are bringing we're bringing technology to the masses. Our focus is on helping people, companies get better engagement with their customers, whatever it is. Those are all elements of what it is. But you have to make sure that when the content goes out, it ties back to it. Or if it's going to stray from it, that's got to be an approved addition to the canon of the story world. Like AI. Look, AI was not part of anybody's story world, 10 years ago.
That's not true. That's not true.
When I say anybody, I'm talking about.
I'm not saying me. Forget me. I'm a little insignificant piece of shit person on the side. But I mean, that's not true. Companies have been straddling AI narratives forever. It's just that the market wasn't ready for that.
Fair. But how do I bring that into how do I tell my version of the AI story? Because AI is now, same thing with when companies.
Now we're getting to what I want to get out of you, which is your core differentiators on top of the narrative. I mean, you have your universe, your core narrative, and your core differentiators, and then you can get to scale, right?
Right.
Okay, so then let's take all this stuff and add personalization to it, because I think that scaling without personalization is just more noise. So and this is also going to start tying back into generative AI and all that stuff, and we got a couple of minutes. So I mean, how do you bring personalization into it? I mean, personalization has been tried many different ways over the last decade and failed miserably over the last decade.
So here's the fundamental challenge: is what does personalization mean? What's personalization?
What do you mean by what?
What is personalization?
What is what? No, I'm kidding. What do you mean by what? What is personalization? That's a good question. So what is personalization? Is it like really down to the individual, getting as much information as we need so we can actually tie back our differentiators within our core narrative in the universe to that specific person, so that, when Salesforce tries to go to sell to somebody like me, they'll say, we know that we have technology that anybody else has, but what we have that nobody else has is the understanding of how that technology can go together better than others, as an example.
Personalization is contextual relevance. If you show me something
that's where he started. That's where he started the show.
Yeah, that's it. Contextual relevance, meaning it doesn't have to know anything about me. It doesn't have to know everything about me to be personalized. It has to just be contextually relevant. And I could decide what that is, or you could decide what that is. And you could put me in a position to find it, or you can deliver it directly to me because of what you know about the context of our interaction.
So then marketing personas are relevant because it's not about the marketing persona, it's about the contextual time and person and situation. I mean, I can make you a CIO, and tomorrow you're going to be a CTO or a chief architect role, and you're still the same person. So then why would I personalize to who you are versus what you're doing? Right?
Marketing personas, and I am not a marketing expert, so I'm not going to, I haven't been in the trenches trying to do that level. But it's a simplification, which was necessary maybe 30 years ago. But when you have the ability to deliver better context to individuals, or deliver based on the context of individuals in a more effective way, do the personas still have value? And because also by the time you figure out what the persona is, it's probably changed because that persona doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't matter because every person plays different personas all the time, constantly. I mean, even if you're the CIO, you're going to get into meetings to discuss architecture. You're going to be a chief architect officer or an architect validator. If you go into like an executive level conversation, you're going to play a role of financials, discussions more than you're going to play a role of technology. So every single persona that you can come up with will have different roles that they play. So the personas are useless at this point. This is part of the evolution of marketing. I mean, 20 years ago, we discovered personas and persona matrices, and we were like, relishing in the fact that we can actually talk to the CIO in CIO terms. But everything evolved. The world evolved. The personas evolved. The roles evolved. The products evolved. So then now what we have is much better technology that we can use to create not a matrix, but a dynamic resolution where the brand universe, the core narrative, the core differentiators, the contextual relevance, and the outcome that you're aiming for will create a unique solution of content.
All right, now I'm going to go for my SAT questions. Marketing to personas is like creating customer experiences.
Yeah, I wish I had a bucket so I could throw up into it. I'm gonna throw up a little bit in my mouth.
But the point is, personas exist, and they're fluid and based even on just situationally, right? So you don't want to market your personas. You want to find a way to be
marketing to personas is
to deliver, to help, to allow people to get what's contextually relevant to them at the time that they're trying to get information to make a decision. Just like you don't create experiences, you allow you set up an opportunity for customers to have good experiences or great experiences.
That's a whole different conversation that we're going to have next time. But to wrap this up, because we only have a couple of minutes, right? Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you. But to wrap this up, we'll get to the last 2 minutes, the last part of the show. But like to wrap this up, I don't think that the personas matter at all, because it's an ever evolving. The world has become so dynamic thanks to technology and technology accessibility that what happened 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, is absolutely worthless and slow today. And it's going to change so much in the next 10 years due to the use of machine learning that this conversation in 10 years, people will look at it and go like, God, this guy's for fucking dinosaurs. What they're talking about, dynamic allocation of content. I mean, everybody knows that it's like, big relevance adjudication to the context that you're in. But and that's what I wanted to get to. I mean, I agree with you that scaling content is not about quantity, but the model that we discussed is pretty relevant to where we are going forward.
Look, I would go back to your original question. How do you scale content? And the answer is you have to identify and codify the elements of your story that are the ingredients for the good content, and then you can build it at scale. Because you can build crap at scale, or you can build good stuff at scale.
Yeah, but I thought you were going to go more zen on me and say, like, how do you scale content? You don't scale content. Content scales itself once you build the right infrastructure, which is true. If you think about it, if you build the right infrastructure, content scales itself.
And then you don't need us.
That's right. And we have 1 minute left, so I'm going to do what I always do at the end. Ask me a question. Ask me a good question. Since it's you, ask me a good question.
Ask you a good question. I ask you terrible questions all the time. All right, here's a good question. Why should I care about scaling content at all? Why do I care about content?
You don't. That's what I started. You don't care about content. Content doesn't matter. Because we live in we are the first native, no, let me rephrase that. We are the first inhabitants of a new world where all the things that we grew up with don't matter. Talk to your kids. Your kids will tell you they don't care about content. They don't. Your kids is different because they work in a creative world where like content matters. It's different. But talk to your kids about what they expect to get from the marketplace. They don't care about content. Content doesn't matter like it used to. Content is nothing. But if you build your universe, if you build your core narrative, if you build the components that play on that, and you let people pick what they need to make the decisions, then you don't really need content. Content creates itself.
I had an adage I used to use, is that a sale happens when at the intersection of my story world and the vendor's story world.
That's right. And that used to be true, but now it's no longer true because your story world changes so quickly based on the technology and the current world and situations and everything that you cannot make them align. But what you can is you can continue your story world, your core personal narrative in your personal universe, and bring in pieces of information that are required to that relevant at the moment that you make the decision to make the decision. And that, my friend, is what content should be in the next 10 years. That's it. That's my opinion, but I've been known to be wrong three times before. So, you know. Without going into details, because anybody who knows me knows what comes after that, I want to thank you very much for this fantastic conversation. I think it was fantastic. I really do. I think that we got through a lot of stuff, and we had only an hour. And, you know, Alan, thank you for being here. I'm Esteban Kolsky. This is Whisper Insights number 5, Scale and Content. See you next week.